everyone. Let me see if I am live. Am I live? Yay, I am live. Okay. So today I want to talk to you about boundaries. I should have do this makeup better. Saturday. Anyway, I want to talk to you about boundaries. What are boundaries? Why I want to talk about that? Why this is important? Anyway, okay. So boundaries, it is kind of a set of rules that you created. So then some aspects of yourself or of your life or relationship with someone else does not go beyond your limit of tolerance, okay? So as human beings, you usually have a limit that we can tolerate some situations in your lives. For example, I can live in a cold place, but what is my boundary on that? What is my limit on that? Did I like it? Not really. So if you are asked to put a boundary on that situation in my life, my boundary would be like, I can live in a place that can be cold in the winter, no more than 32 Fahrenheit, okay? And if the place, let's say I'm like moving or whatever, if the place is colder than that, I do not move there or don't live there. So let's talk about, give you another example of boundaries in a relationship, for example. I have some sets of principles and beliefs and things that made me that I believe that is important. So to keep this protected and to keep this in the level that I desire to be, I usually set some kind of boundaries. For example, my young son, when get upset, he usually yells a lot, and I don't like that. Give me headache, I feel upset and angry. So I put a boundary with him. I told him like, I do understand that you have great big emotions going on there, that you are upset or whatever, and that you want to yell. But I don't like yellings. So anytime that you yell, I'm gonna remove myself from our conversation or interaction, and I come back when you stop yelling. So that's my boundary. Okay. This is just a few examples for something that I want to try to give the concept for you. So it is kind of a limitation, a borderline that if someone cross, you can do X, O, Z, right? So it's like if my son yell again, I cannot let him to responsible to keep my boundaries because it is my boundary. Okay, something that I notice many people do, it is get upset when the boundary they set it is broken because A, B, or C did not respect their boundary. But the boundary, it is the responsibility, this responsibility to make sure that the boundary, it is not break it, push it, or move in any directions. It is yours. Okay, so when you set a boundary, it cannot be something conditional to somewhere else's behavior. I could come and say, buddy, if you start to yell, I want you to go to your bedroom. It's reasonable? Yes, but he can decide not go to his bedroom, right? And keep yelling. And then I give you my power to him. Him gonna be the one that's gonna determine if my boundary gonna be kept or not. So when you establish a boundary in someone or something, you need to make sure that the condition of your boundary, it is you have totally power over it. For example, if I have interaction with someone and this person starts to be aggressive or speak bad language or something that I have my boundaries, I don't like it, I cannot let that person be responsible to keep my boundary or to even get it's not a punishment, but uh, fulfill the, how am I going to say that? Fulfill the limitation of my boundary, because then I'm giving my power to them. Okay. So if someone come to me and start to be disrespectful or anything like that, I have the choice to, one, let the person do that. Two, don't let the person do that and ask for the person to remove himself or something like this. Or three, don't let the person do that and remove myself from the situation because it's something that I can control. I cannot control someone else's behavior, someone else's thoughts, someone else's desires. I can control myself. Okay? So that's a boundary. Anything else can be a request or whatever. But if you want to create a boundary, you need to be responsible from the outcome of the boundary if someone did not follow through. And let me tell you something. They will not follow through because that's human nature, especially if you're talking about our kids. They do not follow the boundaries. And you needed to be able to reinforce that boundary. So it is with repetition, with patience, with love, so that we make that boundary be respected. Okay. So if you want to uh, put some limits, some boundaries around your house, make some rules that those rules also qualify as boundaries, you need to be able to have 100% control of the outcome if a person, a little person, or a group of a person decide to not keep your boundary or not or push up your boundary. Okay. So you are responsible for that. It's not the other person. And we usually have this misconception of believe because I put the boundary, the other person, just because I said, don't do that, please, because I don't like it, I think it's disrespectful or whatever, we think that the person has the obligation to fulfill a boundary, and the person does not. It is your obligation, sorry, it is your obligation to make sure that your boundary it is reinforced. Okay. So if you want to be respected, if you want to uh, be considered a person that firm in your decisions, I suggest that when you set a boundary, that you make sure that you can follow up. Okay. Because if you say, don't do that, someone go there and do this thing that you just asked to don't do it, and you do nothing about it, this person gonna keep doing exactly the same thing. Okay. So when you set up your boundary, you need to make sure that you can follow through and follow up about this boundary that you are setting up, and that you have 100% control of the outcome. Can be you can remove yourself from the conversation, you can, I don't know, stop listening what the person said, you can turn off the phone if it is the case. I don't know exactly what situation you are going through that you want to put a boundary in about it, but you need to make sure that you have the control of the outcome of your boundary. Okay. So why boundaries is so important? Because it helps us to find the limits and where we can go or not in situations, in relationships, and in everything. So consider like this: you are married with someone. Usually, you guys have boundaries. That is not exactly like, oh, that is my boundary, but it's common sense stuff. Usually, you don't go there and disrespect your husband or wife with intention. Actually, it's not what happened usually. And because you love that person and do that, gonna hurt the feelings, gonna make the relationship hard to manage or to have it. And so we have this common sense boundaries usually, uh, about yelling, about don't hurt someone else. It's almost kind of the commandments that you already know. And we usually follow through those. And when someone new, or even that we know come and try to go over this set of principles and rules that we have in your life, we usually say, oh, no, I am not allowing you to do that to me. What that represents? One represents that you respect yourself, that you love yourself enough and love the other person enough to say, no, I do not accept this kind of behaviors. Besides, I love you. Second, you also show love uh, and show by example, for example, for your kids. That's how to behave. So it's not because you're a good person that you do good for everybody around you that you need to accept it. Every kind of behavior that the people throws on you. No, I can be a good person. I can be the most generous person in the world and have boundaries, like Christ. He loves every single one. He loves all sinners, but he has a boundary. He do not accept the sin. Okay? There is two different things. And most of the time, we mingle together and we forget that is the person and that is the behavior. I can love this person to death and say, I do not accept this set of behaviors uh, in towards me, but I'm still loving you. That show this person that you have love for yourself and love for others. Why? Because when we let these boundaries be pushed or break constantly, what usually happens it is we start to resent the person. We start to judge. We start to be a kind of a person that we usually do not like to be. At least I don't like to be. But that's what happened. And what something that was beautiful, that was able to create life and construct that is a good relationship can be destroyed just because we are not able to set health boundaries. Um, a little parenthesis about that, it is boundaries are not punishment, okay? It is not a way to punish someone. Boundaries, it is a way to show respect to self and to others. Why I'm saying that? Because sometimes we have this idea that I can use my boundaries to punish someone. Someone did something that I don't like it, so I gonna do this because I know that gonna hurt that other person. And it is not what I'm talking about here, okay? I'm talking about boundaries in a sign of respect and love for yourself and for others. So all good and healthy relationship has boundaries. For example, it's a very idiot, sometimes I say, boundary, but it's something that for me is important. I don't like a messy bedroom. I don't like my bed to be messy. So much so that usually when I go lay down in the bed, I usually, straight the sheets and all those things and lay down, at least in my side. And my husband know that. And I made sure he knew this about me in your honeymoon. Person, person, because he doesn't really care about that. It is not something that bothers him, but bothers me. Okay, so I made sure that if you come here just and mess up my side at least of the bed, I'm gonna leave. You can mess your side, but leave my side. Side. I am a little. I know, but it's just one example. Okay, uh, there is another one that I usually tease him when he does it, is that when I was pregnant, I have these chocolate bars that I hide somewhere because he's crazy for chocolate. And if I let the chocolates be there, he's gonna eat all, because why not? And one day he found one of my last bar of chocolate and he ate it. And he put a little face, smiling inside of the package, say, and behind was like, sorry, I ate the last piece. And I told him afterwards, that, you never do that again, especially for a pregnant woman. And what I did to reinforce that, I did not let him responsible to reinforce that, because I knew he gonna not, remember, because that's something that is not important for him. It is for me. So I usually, when I buy like I usually buy 2 little bars of chocolates if I buy any chocolate, and I give his chocolate and my chocolate stay in a place that I usually hide. He doesn't know what it is. So that's my way to keep my boundary. And when he finds, now that he knows my boundaries, he usually say, baby, that is the chocolate that I can eat, or it is your out of the boundary chocolate. And that's the out of the boundary chocolate. And if you wait, you're gonna pay me $10 for this little bar. And how I reinforce that, I just take the money. Don't let his responsibility. So, crazy boundaries apart, it is something extremely important, because then you start to learn how to show respect and love for someone that you are having a relationship with. So it is good that the boundaries, it is communicated up front, that you are, so there is a few elements to make it this a boundary. Cannot be for punish someone, like if you cross my boundaries, I don't know, I don't talk to you for a whole month. That's a kind of a punishment. So that is not exactly the most healthy boundary. Can you understand? But you can say, if you push my boundary, I will remind you again about the boundary, and I can remove myself from the place in the moment. At least I cool off, or you cool off. And that is okay, because as human beings, the best thing you can do if you are having an argument or a heat situation, it is remove yourself from that situation. So you can cool off and you can start think clear again. Okay? So the other things that we are going to talk about today is about binding. Binding, it is usually, okay, there is different concepts about binding. There is the binding that you do in sewing, that is put layers of fabric together with a good finishment. So you are doing a binding process. See, many layers, and you can come in binding that together with a nice finish looking. And that is the binding in a relationship or get together and be strong on that. So, how you can do that? Usually, it is by being vulnerable, believe it or not. It's not by building a wall around you or blocking uh, people or situations from you. It is open up. It is be able to have a heart to heart conversation in all these little, and usually are little moments, little situations. And more you practice that, the better you get. And can be scary, can be nerve wracking for some people, but it is the best thing you can do for your relationship so you can have the best binding, the best join, the most strong one possible. So when you open up in your heart, when you try to be vulnerable in a sense that you show yourself the way you are for this other person, and this other person are able to see you, really see you, not see the mask that you are using or the wall that you are put in front of you, but to see you. That's when the binding happens. Okay. So if you in your family, for example, how can you have a better bond or binding with your kids? It is by telling them stories about your life. Is listen, really listen what they have to say to you, and have these heart-to-heart conversations. That's how we usually can reinforce the bonds between members of a family, between friends, between lovers, between co-workers. It is be able to let be seen is see others the way they are and accept this person with the flaws and with the all beautiful things that the person also has. Okay, like Jesus Christ is not necessarily abide to the things that we do not believe, but love the person and know that that this person, like you, it is in a process of evolving in life. And everybody has different levels around life. That's what makes life beautiful. Okay. So today we gonna finish our project. You remember the half square triangles that we made, this table runner, very beautiful. They ended up. But I told you, like, guys, you're gonna need to do the binding as well, because that's what make the whole process have a beautiful finish look. So what I noticed was when I was trying to move this long table runner, because they ended up being like 90 inches long, 17 inches wide. They be I'll say bumping on the cameras all the time because it was too long. So what I thought was I can make a mini version of the table runner and teach you the principles on this mini version. So when I be moving this around my machine, it is not bumping on the camera all the time. That's why I'm gonna show you the end result or how to finish the piece that we made it. Remember that I taught you guys to make how make the block of the table runner, and then you needed to make six exactly six blocks exactly the same way and put these blocks together. And how do you put the blocks together? The exact same way we put those little half square triangles together. We line up and then line up in the seam allowances, and then you put a little pin if you need, and we sew. So that's how we put the blocks together. okay? Now we're gonna transfer for a different camera here, and I'm gonna show you how to finish this beautiful work that you just made with your half square triangles blocks. So what we're gonna do is, oopsie, I put you guys into no camera, not cool. So what we're gonna do here, let me bring my camera down here a little bit because I think my up camera just turned it off. And I think my app camera just turned it off. Let me see if I can turn it in again to have a better look on that. And okay, my block here. There we go. Now we can see what I want to show you, Pixie. So you're gonna end up having a block, something similar to this, but bigger, okay? And in the case, it's not even a block, but let me see what I mean here. First, before you make all those layers, what you needed to do, even before we put the blocks together, we're gonna to square up this little block, because sometimes what happens is, because we are cutting and working a bias, those things stretch a little bit and they give a little deformation on your block. So what you're gonna do is something like this. You're gonna notice that you have a teeny, very small, see, difference between this block and this block. So what I can do is I can come here and square up my block. I take my ruler, and what usually I do is I use the center seam as my guide. So I line the center seams with the one of the measure of my ruler. If you notice here, this little piece is extra. So that's what we're gonna remove to square up to make this better square. See, smooth. And I'm gonna do this in all of my sides of the square for all my blocks. And when I finish to do that, then I'm gonna put my blocks together, okay? And you're gonna have a much better end result when you do that. And the last one here. Okay, so after I do that, what we're gonna do? In the case of the table runner, we're gonna put all the blocks sewn together. So for example, imagine that it is a piece of my table runner, and those are my blocks that I just finished. What I'm gonna do is I take the block and I line up all the seams the same way. Okay, see, these are the blocks here, also need to be squared up a little bit. I align my seams together, and then I sew a block with the other, and then the other and the other one, and then I'm gonna make my whole quilt. Oh yeah, it's part of a quilt. And then when I have this piece all sewed together, all the patchwork sewed together, what I need to do is I'm gonna need to have a back fabric. In my case, I'm using this yellowish color as a back fabric, and you're gonna have to have something that's something like this. That the name just escaped in my mind right now, but it is the material we use to make blankets, to make all those quilt elements. So it is usually can be polyester or cotton, or a mix of polyester and cotton. And you're gonna use this material to be in the middle of your composition here. I have this big guy here, I don't know if you can see, that I bought for making a quilt. And I have different kinds of material like this in different thickness, so you can choose the one you want to use. I didn't want to buy any other one, so I just took a piece of that one, okay? And you're gonna put like your back fabric, a layer of the center here, and then your patchwork on the top. The ideal situation, it is have 1 inch extra, back fabric and polyfill, I think the name is polyfill, bigger than your patchwork. Why? If you cut exactly the same size, what usually happens is maybe you're gonna have something missing. If you work with a big patchwork and a long arm machine to do the quilt, you need the extra fabric to be able to hold in the machine, okay? If you are using a house machine, it is also recommended to have this extra material around of your quilt, so you can have kind of a safe net to work, let's say, okay? So when you do this, you can pin your material around as many as pins you feel comfortable with to work on. The idea is when I be moving this around on my machine, I don't want the layers to be moving around, okay? And I also don't want have crinkle parts in the back. So make sure that everything is nice, smooth, and flat. Okay. When you do this, you're gonna bring those guys to the sewing machine, because now we're gonna have some fun with that. And how we're gonna use this? You can be using, let me put the sewing machine on top here. You're gonna use a thread that match the color of your wool. And the first thing that you need to do is to anchor all those layers together. What does it mean? You're gonna need to baste, okay? Baste is a kind of stitch that are very long stitch that's meant to be removed afterward, but have the function of hold the pieces together until you finish do the work that you are intending to do. Okay, so I'm gonna baste here. That means I'm gonna make a very, let's see if I can go up a little bit here so you guys can see better. I'm gonna make a very close seam allowance, very bend the edge in a big stitch, kind of a loose stitch, because I can remove this later if I want to, but because I'm gonna bind this, I probably just gonna let that. But the idea is have something that if you want to remove afterwards, you can, okay? And I just gonna do a straight stitch all around the edge, binding or putting those pieces together. Okay. Binding my piece, the very edge here. Can you see that? Very in the edge, an eighth of an inch or less of a seam allowance here. Because the idea here is just make sure that those layers does not gonna move while I am quilting this piece, because you're gonna need to quilt that. We just made the patchwork. We're gonna now work the piece to quilt the way you desire. Be careful to keep everything nice and straight. So if you need to stop a little bit, just do it, okay? Because it's better you spend a little bit more time, then you lose your nice work. You need to repeat everything again. So after that, this here, you see, can you see? all the pieces bind together. That means that now my piece, even though I'm gonna be moving around here, it does not gonna be moving very much. So what I can do is I can come here and cut the excess, or I can cut this excess just when I finish. That's usually what I like to do. I just cut the excess when I finish my piece and prepare it to bind. So what kind of quilting I will be doing here with you guys today? I will do the stitch in a ditch. So I'm gonna use this little foot here. They have this little bar that's gonna help me guide in between pieces, like in the seam allowance. This is gonna be exactly in the line of um, my seam, and this is gonna be my guide. I'm gonna show you. It is something like this. See, I'm gonna put this little bar in this junction here, and this is gonna guide me to sew exactly in this position. That is stitch on a ditch, in a ditch. Okay, that is the ditch. So that's what we are gonna do right now. That is one of the most easy way of quilt. It is stitch in a ditch because you already have the lines to guide you. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna come here, and when my guide is gonna help me stop, keep my quilt aligned with my seams that I already have in place in here. And back one here. I did one stitch extra. So when you are doing this, you don't need to be in a hurry. You can go slowly as you want to, or as fast as you want. That depends on how much experience do you have. I like to go slow because give me a better result. And then I'm following here. My idea is to have this center triangle outline. Okay, so if you take a look here, let me show you. I stitch all the way around my triangle. That's called stitch in a ditch. When you look in the backward, what's the figure that was made? Exactly the triangle that I have in the front. So in here you can do free motion quilt, all kinds of things that you desire. I like to do a stitch in a ditch. One, it's easy. Two, I'm not very good in free motion. And three, I don't have these machines that do the quilt for you. So I love to do the patchwork. The quilt, I do because it's necessary and make it very true. But here you can do, you can make stripes, parallel stripes, you can do circles and swirls. You can decorate the way you want to make these more the way you desire. For example, I can come in here and make some extra lines, for example. If I want to get a different pattern in my quilt, okay? The quilt is pretty much drawing with stitches. Or at least that's how I like to call it. So for example, I decided to make another parallel line around my triangle. So they're gonna give me this effect here in my craft. In the back, it's gonna look like that. I could come and stitch the other seams here. I could make just, some swirls, but it is a small piece and I just want a little simple quilting. That's how I'm gonna end it up with this, okay? So now that my piece, it is quilted, let me take my long scissor here. Now that my piece is quilted, what I'm gonna do is I needed to cut the excess fabric here before I put the binding. So we're gonna cut as close as I can be without cutting the basting stitch that I put around here, okay? So that's what I'm doing right now. And it is one way to do your quilting using the binding method, okay? And if you notice, you can use this technique for big quilt as well. The difference is gonna be just the amount of fabric that you're gonna need to be careful to work around your sewing machine. Okay, usually you're gonna divide in small sections and work the long and big piece in small sections on your machine because home machine usually has this area here, the arm, that's called the arm of the machine, that has a limited space. So can be a little bit challenged if your piece, it is a very long, big piece. Oh, it's not really long, but a very bulk piece. Okay, that is ready to put the binding afterward. But let me show a different method that you can do as well. So here I have a different way of doing this. So what I can do here, instead of using, let me put the top camera, you can see better. So then you can see better what I'm trying to convey to you. Here, you, instead of put the back layer, the soft piece in the middle, and then on the top, what you're gonna do is, I'm gonna have the back layer and my piece together like that. And what I want to do is have the right sides together, if you see. Then I have, in this case, usually you need to have a very precise cut of, or a little bit precise cut of the fabric fill. So what I'm gonna do here is cut the size of my patchwork, and you're gonna see why that apply on that piece. So cutting here all the way along, and cut this way as well. There we go. Put those pieces away. So then what I'm gonna do is, now I have this, I'm gonna turn around, I'm gonna put it right sides together. And I'm gonna pin this because I don't wanna move it yet. Remember that I did not baste this piece. This not yet. Okay. Put it in the middle so they don't move. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a mark. What I like to do is have something that I can use to mark a minimal distance of the size of your hand. So I'm gonna put it here, a little mark, a little mark. Can you see my marks? There we go. And I'm gonna bring this piece to the sewing machine and I'm gonna sew everywhere except this area that is marked here. So we're gonna come, so here, pivot, so all the way down, pivot, so all the way down here, pivot, pivot until here, okay? And then what we're gonna do is turn this inside out. So let's go to the sewing machine to do the piece. In the sewing machine, what we're gonna do, bring the piece here. So we're gonna start here, go back tack or anchor your stitch. And we are using a 1/4" seam allowance. Normal size stitch. So it's not a basting, it's sewing properly, okay? And backwards. Go all the way to the end. And I see there is more or less a 1/4" here. I go lifting my presser foot to a 9-degree angle, pivot, that's what we call, and keep sewing, okay, all the way down. And if you notice, you're gonna need it to be a little bit more intentional about that. You need to guide a little bit more. Sometimes this you make the piece do not move well, so you need to be careful to make sure the piece is moving. It's not stuck. But anyway, okay, and get to the end, stop, turn around again. It is kind of a base, but with the normal size stitch. Why? Because I want this to be well hold it. I don't want to remove this stitch in the end. I want to keep it that, okay? And we get in the end here, I go backwards because I want these end pieces to be reinforced. Okay? So reinforce the ends. I anchor my stitch there. I finish until the mark. I sew until the mark. If you take a look in the back, here is all the way, all sides. I sew except for the opening that I let there. And now what I'm gonna do here is to cut the excess fabric that I have. All the way, all 4 sides of my square here. I'm gonna cut the excess fabric. And that's another way that you can finish your piece that you are working. For example, the piece of the long table runner that we learned in the other class. Removing my pins, I'm gonna come here between the fabrics. You can see here, between my layers of fabric. I'm gonna put my hand, I'm gonna turn it around. Okay? And what you need to do is make sure this little edges, this little point, it is well pushed up so you can have a sharp point for your square. You don't want like a long, crazy point, okay? Oh, did you see what just happened here? I saw a little far away, so this fabric here was not pick up in the process. So I'm probably gonna need to turn around this and sew back together. Look, and I need to come here in this little area and sew a little bit further down here just because when I did the first time, I did not capture the whole thing. So, and I don't want that to happen. In this case, I need to go all the way because I don't want to have a level goes over. So usually what we do when we have a seam allowance that you need to tune that a little bit bigger, we cut the points of the corner, because when you turn around, it does not be so big, okay? So turning around, again, pull off the edges, straighten nice. You can use your finger, you can use a pencil. There is some tools that it is used to do this kind of pulling here. But you can see how this is gonna be turned up. This one here, do not gonna need a binding because I don't have edges showing like this. See the difference? This here need a binding, and this one here, the seam is already concealed inside. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pull this little area inside, tuck this little piece inside here, together with the other side, like this, okay? And then I'm gonna put a pin here to hold it. And we're gonna finish these edges by top stitching. You remember what is a top stitching? It is a stitch that you're gonna do on the top, usually as a finish ending process to, in this case, to be able to close this opening here, and also to help secure those seams allowance together that we just turn around, okay? I like to put little pins here on the place that really needed to be closed. And then we're gonna bring this to the sewing machine. And we're gonna sew all 4 sides, all the way around here. We're gonna sew this, okay? So I'm turning my piece here. So we're gonna put very close to the edge. See, my presser foot is out of the fabric, if you notice it here. And let's see if you can see that. Yeah, that's my, the presser foot, and my fabric is kind of inside. My needle, it is really on the edge here. And I'm gonna top stitch all the way around. Remember to do not stitch on top of a pin. So when the pin comes close, you need to remove so you don't damage your sewing machine or break your needle. And you go all the way around. Yes. Your piece without using the binding. All the way. All the sides. If you notice in those junctions, usually it is bulkier. So you need to be careful to don't go too fast that you can, so sometimes your machine can get stuck there. Or if it is too hard and too bulky, you can have your needle break in this point. So, and that's, you make your clothes all the way around. okay? So what you can do as well here is now do your stitch on the ditch to make your quilt, okay? So then you're gonna do what we did with the other block, but after had finished, okay? Some patterns, some projects do the quilt after you close is hard, but simple projects like that, it is totally fine. If you don't want to work to put a binding on that, you can finish with this method here. And after finish, you can just come and do your stitch on the ditch, quilt moment, because that's the quilt itself. What we are doing before was the patchwork side of the project. Maybe one more stitch here. There we go. Then we keep doing. See this area there. We need to give a little help to the machine. It's not like a crazy pull, sorry, crazy pull peeling, but you need to give a little gentle push here. Okay. Stitch. And if you take a look, you see your triangle in the back. The other thing that you can do, it is do the exact same next row, but internally instead of outside. Sorry for my hands is in front. I'm used to having my hand in that side here holding the fabric and guiding the fabric. Sometimes I forget that the camera is there. Turn around. That's how you do your stitch on the ditch little block. I'm gonna use these little guys as I'll say the pad when you need to hold something hot, or just if I want to put something hot on my table, I can use this to put on top. See? That's how you finish a quilt with no binding at all. But if you want to use a binding method, what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna cut 2.5 inches wide stripes. Okay. In this case, how do you know how much stripes to cut? You're gonna cut by the width of the fabric. In this case here is like 40 inches wide. And I measured how much inches it is each size here. I add this number, and the final number I just, compare how many stripes I needed to complete my project. And what are we gonna do here? I will put the binding. I'm gonna cut 2.5 inches stripes. And if you need more than one stripe, you're gonna sew those stripes together. Then you're gonna iron the stripe, fold in half, like this. Is the stripe, I fold in half, and then I iron. And to put this piece as a binder, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna line up here. I like to line up in the beginning on the leaving, let me show you how much, 3 inches or more extra piece here. And what I like to do is to sew all those corners. I think I just start on the wrong side. Let's put it back here. See this mark, and this is here. I'm going to start to sew here. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay. Coming into the machine. I'm going to use 1/4 of an inch seam allowance after my mark. Small. But what you're going to need to do is you're going to sew this until the edge here. Okay. And 1/4 inch before you finish, because when you 29 degree, you need to have 1/4 inch seam allowance here as well. So you're gonna sew this till more or less 1/4 inches left. And I like to back tack here and cut. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn this guy in a 9-degree angle. So I'm gonna make this fold in 45 degrees here. See that fold here? Or just fold in a 9. And then when they come here, 45 degrees. See? First I hold back. Just leave it here the 1/4 inch. Then I hold this down and turn my binding tape like a 45 degrees, like this. Very, very edgy here. I fold. Why am I doing that? Because I need space. I need extra fabric here. When I turn around, I don't have something pulling my binding, so I'm gonna be able to unfold this. So if you look, you're gonna have like a little flap here. See? Little flap. So what I did, I turned all the way back, lining this edge with this edge. I hold and make like a 45-degree angle here. What's gonna make my fabric line up with this edge. So then I'm gonna turning around, line all the edges, turn around, and exactly in this line here, that was my 1/4 inch. I'm gonna start to sew right here. Sometimes I need to a little bit of push. Just go. Same procedure I do in the other corner. So I'm gonna do this exact procedure in all corners. So why I do that? Because when I turn this, ooh, see, don't do that. What I did, I forgot to put this afterwards. So now I can't turn this. So I'm gonna need to remove this stitch. That is my stitch break. You have something like this. You can just break those stitches there, because I don't want this here being locked down here. I want this to be able to be free, so when I turn around, I'm gonna have something like this in the other way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove those stitches that is making my piece here. Lock it down, lock it up, pull back a little bit, and then I'm gonna sew again. So be careful when you start to do this. You do your foldings and everything, but don't let the piece be cut up and down. Otherwise, you are not able to do what you need to do here to guarantee a nice twinning. If you notice, you do not start to sew the very back. You will start to sew in that line here, the 1/4 inch, because I want to have something like this. When I turn around, I'm gonna be able to turn this piece, okay? I don't remember exactly the name of this technique in English, but I think it's a mini thread corner. There we go. That's what I can do. If my corner gets stuck there. So again, I'm gonna do this exactly same folding in all 4 areas, because when I turn this around here to finish the binding, that's what you're gonna have. So I'm gonna have this three corner here. You see here? Make sure you guys can see. My lights are here, it's not bad, maybe not. The pieces, they get together, and in the very corner here, they get together in a 45-degree angle. And I have enough fabric to do that because I did that folding in the other side, okay? So let's do exactly the same in every single piece. Line up. We start to sew 1/4 inch in. And if you notice it, your machine is going to start to hold on because that is very bulky. Cut. Turning again. So the idea is to have, see, 45-degree. Align this fold into this other area. Align these raw edges together. And then I see here, 1/4 inch in. I'm gonna start to sew. Stitch line. Cut. Do exactly the same this other side here. Exactly the same. In this case, what I'm gonna do is just hold this area, and you're gonna see why. 1/4 inch in. Okay. So if you look here, now it's time to measure how much more binding I need. So I'm gonna measure putting this overlaying here, one top of the other, 1/4 inch inside, no more than that, okay? So then I can cut. Usually you're gonna have, the piece is gonna be bigger than just that. But you're gonna open both of the, both sides of the binding tape, and we're gonna sew that together. So I don't need to have, I sew a little too further here. I don't need it to have a yucky end result here. So I'm gonna put these pieces together here, and I'm gonna sew 1/4 inch, because that was the distance that I gave for the extra fabric I gave it for when I laid them together. It's just 1/4 inch. So we're gonna line up here and sew those pieces to close this bind. Like that, line up, fit it down, back tack, line the edges. Just line the edges together. There we go. Get the line, and then I'm gonna pull up. See? Because then when you put a line here, it is exactly the size of your piece. And then you just need it to sew all the way to close this area here, okay? Line up in your last 1/4 inch. Now I have all 4 sizes, but sew together. My sewing machine is too close. Yes, there we go. Now that all my sizes are sewed together, I can come here and cut some extra threads. Not too many. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn this over the other side, like this. See? Turning. And how I'm gonna end this? I'm gonna pull this edge all the way here, and I'm gonna start to sew them. Also, I'm gonna sew this in the very edge here of this line. Let's do that. You can do this by hand or with a sewing machine. I prefer doing it with my sewing machine because by hand it's taking me forever. But that's me. Some people prefer the end result of the binding and the finish in a hand sew. I don't have this problem. I can live with this being done by a sewing machine. So what I'm doing here is like I am this right here. I forgot to tell you something. You need to cut this little tip here. And why we do that? Because I don't want this area to be bulky, or too much bulky. So you cut these little tips, but then you can fold this all the way down here. I take this side and go over that in a way that this here make a 45-degree angle. So, in my very edge. Turn around and do the same on the other side. To the end, over my 45-degree angle. See? 45-degree angle here. So the edge of the bind, but it's not this edge here, this internal edge here. Making sure you get all the fabrics going together. Oh, what's this little piece here that I forgot to cut? Okay, exactly the same. Go through the end. Hold that. Some people like to put some things to help to hold. What is nice. I just don't have time to do this right now. I usually like to hold and then I go adjusting by sewing. Around again, straighten up all the way, and then I turn this 45-degree angle. This little bind here, they're gonna get together. Okay. What usually you can do also is put a little pin in the area here, so it holds better your junction. Sometimes it's hard to put those chin pins. And slowly adjust the top. Remove your pin because you don't want to sew on top of that. Turn 90 degrees and finish sew. Ending exactly in the place that you started. This way you have your binding with a binder. See? You can finish with a binder tape, or you can just turn it back inside out and finish your project. I hope you guys have liked this today, and you can finish the table runner in one of these two techniques that you choose to use. Okay, I hope you guys enjoy and see you on the next live. Bye guys.